Welcome to Green and Woke on YouTube. We hope you enjoyed this segment. The link to the entire podcast can be found in the description box. On June 19th, we celebrate Juneteenth, aka Juneteenth Independence Day, aka Freedom Day. Juneteenth commemorates the announcement of the abolition of slavery in Texas. Even though the Emancipation Proclamation had taken effect in January of 1863, it took over 2 years for the news to reach Texas. Some slave owners had left the fighting in the East to come to Texas, which had, for the most part, not seen the bloody battles fought in the eastern states. Most slaves and slave owners lived in rural areas in eastern Texas, but there were more than 1,000 slaves in both Galveston and Houston. By 1865, the total number of slaves in Texas was around 250,000. Robert E. Lee surrendered to the Union Army on April 9, 1865, but again, word of this didn't get to the South until later. In fact, the Army of the Trans-Mississippi kept fighting until June 2nd. The reason for the slow spread of news is that the North had a vast network of trains and telegraphs. In the South, rail lines had been damaged or destroyed, and the telegraph network simply did not exist, since the South lacked the infrastructure of the North. So, most news had to travel by word of mouth. On June 18, 1865, Union Army General Gordon Granger finally arrived in Galveston with 2,000 Federal troops to occupy Texas. The next day, June 19, 1865, from the balcony of the Ashton Villa Mansion in Galveston, General Granger read General Order Number 3, announcing the total emancipation of those held as slaves. The celebration of Juneteenth was spread by Texans to other cities like Los Angeles, Oakland, and Seattle. It is also recognized by the Muskogos, who are the descendants of Black Seminoles of Coahuila, Mexico. This group of indigenous peoples are different from the Seminoles of Florida. The Seminoles of Florida are also a group of Black indigenous people, but they have sovereign nation status. They are recognized as a sovereign tribe with sovereign tribal land. Today, their nation includes land near Hollywood, Florida, and they own the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood. Many Africans who escaped, both in the United States and Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, joined indigenous tribes. Some in areas like South Carolina and countries like Honduras still speak indigenous languages and continue to exist as they have for centuries, practicing their traditional indigenous cultures. The largest group of African indigenous people in South America is the Garifuna, found in the northern triangle countries of Honduras and Guatemala. Some also live in Belize. They have expat communities in Los Angeles and New York. In the Carolinas, mostly South Carolina, the Afro-Indigenous tribes include the Gullah and the Geechee. Like Haitians, the Garifuna practice their own kind of Catholicism, which is essentially Catholic teachings mixed with African spiritual traditions. This has often led to misunderstandings and erroneous depictions in film and television. The most known traditions are Haitian voodoo and Santeria, which is practiced in Central America, parts of Mexico, and Cuba. In Brazil, there is a stronger African influence. Brazil received the largest number of slaves during the slave trade, so today Brazil has the largest population of people of African descent, 3 times that of the United States. The spiritual practice in Brazil is called Palo Mayombe. Other than the Black Seminoles of Coahuila, Mexico, Coahuila is one of the desert states of Mexico bordering Texas. Most of the Black population of Mexico is in and around the city of Veracruz, a port city on the Gulf of Mexico.